I kept my breathing slow, the kind of slow that fools even a mother's own heart. The house had long since settled into its midnight hush, but a faint creak from the hallway sliced through the stillness like a razor. A thin line of golden light leaked beneath my bedroom door. I felt the silk of my pillowcase cool against my cheek and forced my eyelids to stay heavy. Then, the whisper of a drawer sliding open. The cedar scent of the nightstand drawer drifted toward me, mixing with the lavender lotion on my hands. My pulse betrayed me, drumming in my ears. Through the narrow slit of my lashes, I caught the silhouette of my son-in-law, Ryan Whitaker, crouched like a thief. In his hand, the glint of a flashlight beam kissed the edge of a key ring, the keys to the safe I'd hidden in the back of my closet. For months I'd suspected something, tiny shifts in his gaze, the way he lingered when money came up at Sunday dinners. But suspicion is one thing, watching him reach into my private drawer while believing me asleep was another. My daughter, Hannah, trusted him. I had trusted her judgment. The icy weight of every secret I had guarded for years pressed against my chest. I held still, the sheet grazing the chipped polish of my fingernails, and wondered which would break first, his silence or mine. 10 years earlier, the smell of hospital disinfectant clung to my clothes like an unwelcome memory. I remember gripping the steering wheel of my battered blue Corolla until my knuckles blanched white. Michael, my husband of 12 years, had passed away only hours before, sudden cardiac arrest. One blink and the future we'd built collapsed into a silence, so loud it rattled in my chest. Back at the house, well-meaning relatives arrived in waves, bearing casseroles and whispered advice. Their voices blurred into a single hum of pity. Someone, an uncle I hadn't seen since childhood, leaned in and murmured, "You'll need a man to help manage the finances. This isn't work for a widow." I felt the sting of those words like a slap. My fingers shook as I poured lukewarm coffee, but I said nothing. Hannah, only 9, sat cross-legged on the couch, hugging a threadbare stuffed rabbit. Her small shoulders trembled each time another stranger wrapped her in perfumed arms. Later that night, after the house finally emptied, I found a sealed envelope on the kitchen counter. My mother, Evelyn, had slipped it there before leaving. Inside was a single brass key on a faded leather strap and a note written in her elegant hand. "This belonged to your grandmother. Never let anyone else hold the keys to your future. You are stronger than you know." I pressed the key into my palm until it left a crescent-shaped imprint, as if strength could be branded into skin. The next morning I visited the small community bank downtown. My voice wavered as I asked the teller for a safe deposit box. I placed that heirloom key inside, along with the deed to our modest home and Michael's life insurance papers. When I turned the lock, something inside me clicked too, a quiet vow, born of grief and defiance. I would not hand over control to anyone, no matter how kindly they smiled or how closely they shared my blood. By the time the sun rose the following day, I had drawn a plan in the margins of my checkbook. My savings were thin, my heart bruised, but a fiercer determination had taken root. I would build a life for Hannah and me that no one could take, or even fully see. Grief hardened into resolve faster than I expected. Within months, I was juggling 2 part-time jobs, bookkeeping at a hardware store by day and late-night data entry for a small tech startup that paid by the hour. The paychecks were meager, but every dollar I tucked away felt like a quiet rebellion against the future others had planned for me. Most nights Hannah slept on the pull-out couch in the living room while I worked at the dining table. The blue glow of my laptop washed over the walls as the old radiator hissed like a restless spirit. I kept a mug of coffee at my elbow and a blanket over my knees, my mother's brass key always in my pocket. When exhaustion whispered that I should quit, I wrapped my fingers around that key and pictured Hannah's soft breathing, her small body curled beneath a quilt stitched with my grandmother's initials. The tech startup's founder, Clara Reynolds, was a whip-smart woman barely older than I was. Clara had once caught me double-checking a spreadsheet after midnight and simply said, "Emily, sorry, Kate, you've got the instincts of a CFO. Ever thought about learning more than the basics?" Her confidence in me landed like a spark on dry tinder. I didn't tell Clara that I barely scraped by each month, or that I'd been told more than once that numbers were a man's field. Instead, I let her mentor me. I learned to read balance sheets as if they were secret maps and to analyze risk with the steadiness of someone who had already lost everything once. Hannah grew, and so did my quiet empire. First, a cautious investment in a small apartment complex, then shares in Clara's company when it went public. I still remember the night I opened my online account and saw the numbers jump, more than enough to pay off every debt and send Hannah to any college she dreamed of. I didn't celebrate with champagne. I brewed tea, inhaled the steam, and rested the brass key on the table. Money was a tool, not a trophy. Friends from those early days knew only the surface of my success. At PDA meetings, I kept my stories simple. Freelance bookkeeping, I'd say, while wearing a cardigan that had the quiet confidence of a woman who could buy the school outright if she wished. Even Hannah, as she grew into a bright, ambitious teenager, knew only that Mom worked hard and saved carefully. I liked it that way. Privacy wasn't secrecy, it was protection. I had learned too well that wealth invites the wrong kind of attention. Years passed. Hannah married Ryan Whitaker, a charming young architect with an easy laugh and an eager grin. I smiled through their wedding photos and toasted their new beginning. But as I watched Ryan's hand linger just a beat too long on the envelope of our modest gift, something in my chest tightened. I slipped the brass key back into my pocket and reminded myself, no one else would ever hold the keys to our future. The soft scrape of metal onward snapped me fully awake. Ryan's silhouette stiffened in the moonlight spilling from the hallway. I kept my breathing even as he eased the door shut, the key ring glinting in his palm. My pulse pounded so loudly I was certain he could hear it. When he turned toward the closet, I spoke. Looking for something, Ryan? The sound of my voice was a quiet blade. He jerked, the keys clattering to the floor. Kate, I thought you were asleep, he stammered, bending to scoop them up. His face caught the silver wash of moonlight, pale, guilty, almost boyish. I swung my legs over the bed, the cool hardwood grounding me. Those are private, I said evenly, my mother's brass key warm against my chest where I'd kept it on a chain for years. He tried a smile that wavered like thin glass. Hannah asked me to find the spare car keys. I thought maybe. Spare car keys, I repeated, letting the disbelief curl in my voice. In my bedroom drawer, past midnight. Ryan's eyes darted toward the safe hidden behind the row of dresses. The air between us tightened. Ryan, I said, standing now, the hem of my nightgown brushing my ankles. That safe isn't what you think it is. He swallowed hard. Kate, I didn't mean any harm. Things are tight at the firm. The bills. And you thought stealing from your wife's mother would help. My tone sharpened, but beneath it was something colder. Disappointment. His shoulders sagged. I wasn't going to steal. I just needed to see if there was something just for a loan. I walked to the closet and pushed aside the dresses. The safe steel face reflected a pale ghost of us both. Slowly, I turned the dial and swung it open. Inside lay a single object, the brass key, resting on a sheet of folded paper yellowed by years. Ryan blinked. That's it. I lifted the key and unfolded the paper. The handwriting, my mother's, was still as crisp as the day she wrote it. Never let anyone else hold the keys to your future. This, I said quietly, is my inheritance. Not money, not bonds. A reminder. Ryan shifted, confused. But why keep it locked away? Because, I said, meeting his eyes, I wanted Hannah to know that trust isn't something you ask for in the dark. It's something you earn in the light. The silence stretched until even the house seemed to listen. Finally, he whispered, I'm sorry. You will be, I replied, my voice steady. Tomorrow morning you will tell Hannah everything. About the bills. About tonight. And you will ask for help honestly, not by creeping through drawers. He nodded, shame washing across his face like a storm cloud breaking. I closed the safe and spun the dial until it clicked. You wanted what was inside, I said softly, but what's in here isn't money. It's the reason I have money, and the reason I will never let desperation make me dishonest.
Learn from that, Ryan.
For Hannah's sake and yours. Ryan's shoulders slumped, and for the first time that night, the air in the room loosened. Morning light spilled across the kitchen like a quiet verdict. Hannah's hair, still tousled from sleep, framed a face creased with worry. Ryan stood beside her, shoulders hunched, his coffee untouched. I set my own mug on the counter and let the silence stretch until it was almost unbearable. Ryan finally cleared his throat. "Kate," he began, his voice small, "I told Hannah everything. About the bills. About last night. I'm sorry." Hannah looked at me, confusion and hurt warring in her eyes. "Mom, why didn't you wake me?" "Because this was between Ryan and me," I said gently. "And because sometimes people show you who they are when they think no one is watching." Hannah's lips parted as if to protest, but I raised a hand. "Your husband came into my room without asking. He reached for what he thought was wealth. He found something else." Ryan's gaze dropped to the countertop. I took a slow breath. "Ryan, you have two choices. First, you and Hannah go through your finances together, every debt, every expense. No secrets. Second, you find help. A financial counselor. A plan to live within your means. If you want my guidance, you'll get honesty first, not a hidden hand in the dark." He nodded, his jaw tight. "I understand. I'm not your enemy," I said, softening just enough. "But trust isn't given because you married my daughter. It's earned, starting today." Hannah reached for Ryan's hand, her fingers trembling. "We can do that," she whispered. I turned to my daughter, my heart catching at the sight of her, the same hopeful determination I'd once carried. "And Hannah," I continued, "you must promise something too. Never give away the keys to your own future. Not to anyone. Not even someone you love." Her eyes filled, not with tears of shame, but of recognition. She nodded slowly. Ryan swallowed hard. "We'll make a plan. I'll prove I can be trusted." "Good," I said, letting the steel return to my voice. "Because love without trust is just a story people tell themselves. And I want more for you both than a story." The kitchen grew quiet again, but the air felt different, lighter, as though an unseen weight had shifted from my shoulders to his. I sipped my coffee, the steam curling against my face, and caught the faint gleam of my mother's brass key at my neckline. Its simple shape rested against my skin, a steady reminder that boundaries aren't walls. They're the framework of real love. Ryan finally met my gaze. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I gave a small, firm nod. "Don't thank me yet. Show me." Weeks passed, and slowly the house found a steadier rhythm. I watched from a quiet distance as Ryan and Hannah spread bills and pay stubs across their dining table each Sunday evening, pencils scratching across yellow notepads. Their voices no longer carried the edge of panic. Instead, I heard the low, steady cadence of two people rebuilding trust, brick by brick. One afternoon, I arrived unannounced with a basket of lemons from my garden. Ryan greeted me at the door, sleeves rolled, the scent of dish soap clinging to him. His smile, small, unforced, carried none of the frantic charm I'd once distrusted. "Budget's balanced this month," he said, almost shy. "We even managed to start an emergency fund." I nodded, a quiet pride blooming where suspicion had once lived. Hannah joined us, her eyes bright. "We couldn't have done it without your push, Mom." I set the lemons on the counter and reached for the brass key hanging from the chain at my neck. The metal, warm from my skin, fit perfectly in my palm, just as it had the night I first vowed never to hand over my future. I pressed the key into Hannah's hand. "This was your great-grandmother's," I said. "It's more than a keepsake. It's a reminder. No matter how much you love someone, never surrender the keys to your own life. Keep them in your own hands, always." Her fingers closed around the key, and she met my gaze with a steady, grateful look. "I will," she whispered. Ryan stood beside her, his arm gently around her waist, eyes lowered in quiet understanding. For a heartbeat, The 4 generations of women in my family seemed to stand with us. My grandmother, my mother, myself, and now Hannah, each of us carrying the same unbroken thread of resolve. I exhaled, a slow, satisfied breath. The house smelled faintly of lemon and lavender, and the late afternoon light pooled across the floor like honey. My journey had begun with loss and suspicion, but it ended here, in strength, in love, and in the unshakable knowledge that true trust is built in daylight, not stolen in the dark. And as the key passed from my hand to hers, I felt the final weight lift.